Run's Girls, Oyin and the Ritualist. A story by Eby's Heart. Oyin was a good girl who came from a religious family. Her family were members of a church that do not even put on any kind of ornament. She sang in the choir, was part of the ushers and even helped out in the children's department. Every parent in her church used her as a yardstick to measure their children's behavior, making her a guiding light for other youths in her church and neighborhood. To crown it all, Oyin was very beautiful and brilliant, to the extent that mothers were already queuing to secure a place for their sons to marry her in the future. Whenever they called her my son's wife, she would simply smile shyly. Look at Oyin, your age mate, how she is excelling in her academics and still very committed to the things of God. Mrs. Dairy, Barbara's mother, would always taunt her daughter. This made almost all the girls in Oyin's church and neighborhood to dislike her. She is always doing eye service, Nina gossiped to favor. Always doing as if she is better than all of us, role model indeed, Priska chipped in, clapping mockingly. Few years later, Oyin aced her high school in flying colors and won their church's scholarship to the university. This created a lot of buzz around Oyin's church. Even some parents could not help themselves, but be jealous of her achievement. Prime International University was one of the top universities in the country, attended by the 1% of the 1%. It was owned by Oyin's church, but almost all their church members could not afford to send their children there. However, a scholarship is awarded annually to 200 most dedicated and intelligent church members nationwide. And this was how Oyin got herself into Prime International University. Oyin found herself in a school that was way above her league. At first, she didn't care, she simply focused on her studies and church activities, but with time, she started struggling to fit into the lifestyle of her roommates and coursemates. And the urge to belong started growing. Oyin, the church girl, as she was called by everyone, please help me zip this gown, Fola, her roommate said smiling. This gown is very expensive, so please take it easy because I don't want story. Fola said and continued smiling. Oh, Oyin, do you want to join us? This party is going to be lit, all the big men in this town will be there, including governors. Fola said and laughed loudly, I am just pulling your legs, I know you will never come. Please keep reading your Bible and books, at least some of us have to look good, don't you think? Fola laughed and left the room at the sound of a horn. Fola was one of those students that joined Prime University with scholarship. She came from a very poor family like Oyin, but she has managed to upgrade her lifestyle to the extent that she could pass for a senator's daughter. Oyin was not paying attention to whatever she wore or however she looked before, but things have changed recently. She now admired everything Fola or any of her female classmates wore, to the extent that she now wears Fola's clothes and walk about in their room whenever Fola was not around. Every morning, Fola and her friends would come back from wherever they went to with lots of gifts and money, and they would show Oyin every one of the gifts, encouraging her to follow them. Then one day, Oyin was putting on one of Fola's gown when she suddenly returned home. Fola saw her and got upset at first, but later laughed so hard at her. You can keep the gown, I have so many of it, Fola said while handing the gown over to Oyin. That gown cost a whooping sum of 300,000. Try it on when going out tomorrow, Fola encouraged. The very first day Oyin wore that gown was the day everyone knew she was in their class, including some lecturers. You are beautiful, are you in our class? Was a question Oyin answered until she was tired. When Oyin got home that day, she was so excited that she got the kind of attention she used to get in her local church and neighborhood for the first time. Being someone who craved attention, she had to look for a way to maintain what she just experienced. So, she joined Fola and her gang of 7 girls to be making money from runs. Gradually Oyin started making good money and her life changed. She would even travel to Dubai, Paris, and many beautiful countries from school, with her clients, and her parents or church members will not know. She will still come to church on Sundays or any day she is in school to sing in the choir. Her voice still vibrating with anointing. Whenever she was going to church, she put on the old shapeless gowns she used to wear, thereby deceiving everyone who would have advised or judged her. Then one day, Oyin, who was already a pro, was sitting at a club she had attended with her friends, smoking and drinking, when a middle-aged man in his 50s joined her. "Hi, I am Adams, and you?" "Oyin, I am Oyin," she said, stretching her hands to greet him. "My friend and I want a babe for the night, and we are going to pay 5 million naira. Oyin's head vibrated at the sound of 5 million. "Did you say a babe or babes?" Oyin asked, throwing her cigarette away. "Well, a babe, if you don't mind." "That means a threesome," Adams added, smiling. Oyin thought 5 million was a lot of money for just a night, but greed and quest for a lifestyle that she cannot even maintain blocked her sense of reasoning. She quickly texted her friend Fola, who was also bargaining price with her client. "Babe, I am off," Oyin wrote with a smiling emoji. Adams opened the front door of his car for Oyin, who was smiling ear to ear. They drove for 30 minutes and entered into the most expensive neighborhood in the state. "Wow. So, this the Banner estate that I have been hearing about. That means he is super rich and 5 million may just be a chicken change to him," Oyin thought to herself. They stopped at a beautiful gigantic house and the gate opened. Oyin was wowed at the beauty of the house and the smart devices put in place. But she was there for business, so there was no time to admire anything other than her bank account. "This way please," Adams said, smiling. Oyin was ushered into a very beautiful bedroom. She sat down, smiling. "You can freshen up, my friend, and I will join you shortly." 1 hour later, Adams and his friend, who was putting on mask, joined Oyin. Oyin felt it was odd. "Why are you on mask?" she asked Adams's friend. But he didn't utter a word. He simply put off the light and put the red bulb on. It was as if the red bulb was emitting a substance that makes one drowsy, because Oyin passed out as soon as the light came on. She woke up in the morning and smiled. "So I made it until morning?" She thought they were weird at night. "Hello, you are awake," Adams's voice startled Oyin, who was looking outside the window. "Where is my money? I need to leave," Oyin, who was already dressed, said to Adams, while picking up her handbag. "Leave? Spend another night with us, and I will double your fee." Oyin, who was no longer comfortable with her stay there, insisted on leaving. "Are you sure you are taking the right decision?" Adams asked, faking a smile. "Yes, I need to be in church this evening," Oyin lied. "Church? Please," Adams smirked. "I need to leave, pay me," Oyin said, raising her voice. "Okay," Adams assured. He left the room and Oyin signed. After 10 minutes, he was not back. Oyin tried to leave the room to look for him, but found out the door was locked. She panicked and reached for her phone, but found it off. She was trying to put her phone on when the ground she was standing opened and she fell into what seemed like a pit and hit the floor, then passed out. She woke up later and discovered she was in a dirty place that seemed like a basement, but with electricity. Oyin heard sobbing and snoring, as if someone was sleeping. "I knew something was wrong. Why did I not follow my instinct? I came here because of the money." She cried and lamented. She found out she couldn't move. Her right leg was on fire from pain. So, she stayed at a place. Oyin heard a sneeze and cough from the dark corner of the basement. "Who is there?" she shouted. But everywhere fell silent. After talking for some minutes, but heard nothing again, she kept quiet and decided to wait for whatever that will happen. After what seemed like 2 hours, a voice said, "Wow, you are awake already? Greedy little bitch, this is where you and your kind belong," the voice said, and put on a very bright light, and Oyin used her hands to protect her eyes from the harsh bright light entering her eyes. The next thing Oyin saw scared the life out of her. The man who was on mask opened a giant gate in front of her and a very big python crawled out, hissing aggressively. Then Oyin looked at the direction the python was going and saw what made her heart sank. Hundreds of people, men and women, were packed in a cell. Some were sitting, while some were lying on the ground. They cast a spell on them. They were not even chained, but can't think of escaping, especially the men. And the men were starved so much, so they will be too weak to escape even if they regained their senses. Apparently, Adams and his friends were ritualists, who got their riches from a big python. Oyin froze as she watched the python swallow 2 of the prisoners, then crawled back into the gate. Few minutes later, Adams came down with some men and they were all carrying bags of money each, that was vomited by the python. Take it to the bank as part of today's sales, the man on mask instructed. Before the man left, Oyin said, "Please let me go." The man became really startled. That basement was enchanted and anyone that was not their member who steps into it, must lose his or her senses. "How did you know you are not at home?" The man's question threw Oyin off. "I am obviously not at home, because I am incapacitated in a basement, with a python and a dangerous man," Oyin replied with a teary voice. Oyin's reply made the man uncomfortable because, once their victims fall into the secret basement, they lose their self-consciousness and become docile, crying or sleeping until the python eats them. The man had no choice than to chain Oyin differently from the others. "This is the real deal, she will make much more money," the masked man was talking to another man on the phone. Meanwhile, Fowler was beginning to get worried that Oyin had not returned since they all went to club 3 days ago, and her phone number had been switched off. "Did this girl travel without telling me or what?" Fowler thought to herself. When 2 weeks had passed, Oyin's church members went to look for her in the hostel. "We are looking for Sister Oyin," Brother Joshua said to Fowler, who answered the door. "She is not around," Fowler replied hurriedly. "Where did she go to? Did she travel or what?" The other members asked Fowler, who was obviously rude to them. "Oyin is not a child that I should police around or ask where she is going to, so she is simply not around," Fowler said and banged in their faces. Brother Joshua took the case to their pastor. "Oyin have not been to church for 2 weeks now, and this is unlike her," Brother Joshua said, looking worried. They began praying and fasting for Oyin. Oyin's parents were informed and the news circulated everywhere, even in her home church. Who would want to harm that poor innocent girl that serves God with all her heart? Some women in her home church were discussing after the announcement was made. Her parents wrote to the general overseer of their church through their parish pastor, outlining Oyin's outstanding qualities as perfect born-again Christian. So, everyone swung into action, including her school. The school launched an investigation into the life of this perfect scholarship student, but what they discovered was disappointing. The police found out that Oyin was a professional runs girl, with high network connection. "We believe she must have traveled with one of her clients," the police concluded. The school, upon hearing this, withdrew her scholarship and expelled her, even without seeing her. Her parents were stopped from attending the church for bringing bad name to their parish. The shock, pain and disappointment that Oyin's parents experienced caused her father to die of stroke. He prayed for Oyin's safe return even on his deathbed. Oyin's mother was turned into a laughingstock, but she prayed and hoped every day for the safe return of her child. Her prayers every day were, "Oyin, my daughter, I know you have sinned and offended God, but please come back alive to me so that we can both seek the face of God again." Weeks turned into months, yet there was no sign of Oyin. Her mother has even moved out of the place they were staying due to attack and abuse from the church's Christian mothers. Their judgment almost made her take her own life. However, Oyin had revived the basement where she was held captive. Everyone was now aware of the happenings around them. She prays every day for God's mercy, and whenever their captors came into the basement, they will all become docile again. Almost every week, a new person joined them. Then one day, the masked man came to drop the little food he normally drops for them. He had never bothered about being attacked, so he moves around the basement freely. He went close to the captives to drop the food, but they all rushed out and pounced on him. They beat him until he couldn't move. Oyin planned everything well with them, so she went for the keys on his waist, and opened the door. They all ran outside and discovered it was pitch dark. Oyin went back and opened the gate where the big python stays, then locked the door behind her. She wanted the python to swallow the man and the other cult member that always came there to collect bags of money. There were about 100 persons left, out of almost 300 she had met there. But before they could make it outside, someone started shooting at them. Almost all of them were killed, except a few who laid on the ground immediately the shooting started. The shooter started coming closer to shoot each of them on the head at close range. He was halfway, when he heard a scream from one of his men. Apparently, The man that was screaming opened the door to the basement and saw the big python swallowing the masked man. This gave Oyin and 2 other persons that were alive the opportunity to escape. Oyin ran until she got to a safe distance and hid. She waited for daylight. When it was daylight, she took a cab to her school, then begged people around money to pay the cabman. She tried to sneak into the hostel, but the hostel security men sent her away and told her she was no longer a student of the school. Her heart broke into pieces. So my parents have found out about my lifestyle? She murmured and wept. But she decided to go home straight and seek for her parents' forgiveness first. Your parents no longer live here. You are a useless child. Your father died because of you. You will rot in hell. These were the many insults and bad words that were hurled at Oyin by neighbors, church members, and everyone who knew her story. Oyin cried and cried. When it was getting dark and she has still not found out where her parents relocated to, she went to their church, but was not allowed into the compound. They called her pastor, who came out to curse her even more. You are a disgrace to the body of Christ. How could you leave this place, because you are no longer worthy? Oyin left the church at night and was crying, walking on the road hopelessly. Then a drunk driver ran her over and drove off. The next day people gathered around her corpse, swearing for the driver that ran her over and praying to God to accept her soul. Her mother was called by the neighbors, who refused to tell Oyin where her parents had moved to come and see her daughter's corpse. When she came and saw how thin and haggard her daughter was, she wept uncontrollably. She was holding Oyin's corpse in the rain crying, and the sympathizers all ran to take shelter from the rain. The question that is begging for an answer is, what killed Oyin? Was it the lifestyle she chose? Was it the church? Or should we just say the society did? I would love to see your response in the comment.
Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.